Hi, my name is David, and I'm a recovering gamer. I was expecting that, thank you. Get points for audience participation. Dungeons and Dragons was my gateway drug. Yeah, that's right. My parents got me a D&D box set when I was 10, and I played with my older brother and a friend of mine from school. My dad thought it would be a great idea if his two sons had something to do together on rainy weekends. Excuse me. My older brother Mitch didn't have a whole lot of patience for me, and I thought he was pretty mean, but we would put up with each other for hours to play D&D. For the 90% of you who, according to Wikipedia, have never played Dungeons and Dragons, let me explain how it works. In Dungeons and Dragons, all the players make up and then pretend to be imaginary characters in a medieval-inspired fantasy world. One player takes the role of Dungeon Master, who acts as referee, narrator, and every miscellaneous person and animal in this fantasy world. The Dungeon Master presents stories, known as adventures, to the players, and then they react as their characters would. For example, "Verily, I shall smite the insolent goblin. Let the cold steel of my blade teach him the respect his mother did not." And so on. The Dungeon Master then decides what happens next based on his own judgment, the story he's trying to tell, and the rules of the game. A lot of the rules are about deciding whether you succeed or fail at various tasks, like hitting said goblin with a sword or busting down a locked door. Mostly you do that by rolling dice of various shapes and comparing the number you get to a target. This game is kind of like improv sketches combined with a violent video game, all governed by a set of rules as complicated as the US tax code. And it is absolutely addictive if you'd rather be someone else, even if just for a weekend. I spent a lot of weekends with my brother and my friend Andrew pretending to be other people for a while. Unlike us, none of our characters were nearsighted. None of them were fighting a weight problem. My friend Andrew was sometimes a warrior priest, sometimes a brainy wizard, sometimes a female elf, which could be a little confusing for everyone else in the room. I was Philbax, the dwarven warrior. Philbax was as strong and brave as David was not. And I'm sure Philbax, son of Gorbax, would have passed the presidential physical fitness test with flying colors, even with his height working against him on the chin-up bar. By high school, I'd moved on to harder stuff. My brother Mitch had gone to college and pretty much stopped talking to me. Andrew had found new friends and new hobbies, like reading things by English authors. And I fell in with a crowd of outsiders, not cool, smoking behind the school kind of outsiders, just really pretty nerdy kids who were definitely not popular, but not real troublemakers either. Just never mind that we wore black trench coats to school every day and thought carrying pocket knives to class was cool. They were into games that I'd never heard of, but eventually I tried all of them. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Cyberpunk, Vampire, Werewolf, the Star Trek and Star Wars TM role-playing games. So the guys I played with were my best friends, and we all shared this passion for gaming. And it's not like winning was the only thing, but as much as we liked each other, we loved showing each other up even more. So we could get really competitive with each other. And so that could lead to a lot of tension in something that was supposed to be all about fun. The worst argument came over an advanced Dungeons and Dragons game. My friends Teak and Chris were in yet another rules dispute, as they were every weekend, and this one really spiraled out of control. What started as a very technical argument over who was or was not properly following combat rules got escalated when Teak obliquely accused Chris of the most blatant form of gamer cheating, which is fudging your rolls. Fudging your rolls is not a cooking term, it's not a depraved sexual act, but it's not something any gamer wants to admit to. So, when you roll dice to determine the outcome of an action, it's not always practical to roll in plain sight of your fellow players. And this is because when you're playing D&D, it involves a lot of books and a lot of paper. And so after a few hours, you have this scene that looks like a bookshelf and a filing cabinet had a hard night of partying and threw up all over your kitchen table. And then for some reason, a Dorm mini fridge full of Mountain Dew and 2-for-1 Domino's pizza boxes came along and just passed out right in the middle of it. So in all that mess, players usually wind up rolling dice on a book or in a little box or somewhere else only they can see clearly. And it's just honor system to be truthful about what you roll. But sooner or later, you may find yourself thinking, oh no, Dorwin the half-gnome, who I have spent the last 2 years building up to a level 17 druid, despite the constant barrage of tree hugger jokes from the moronic barbarian warrior who just appointed himself party leader, cannot be eaten by an invisible dragon just because this goddamn piece of orange plastic landed with 13 pointing up instead of 11. And you say out loud, oh yeah, I just made my saving throw. I rolled an 11. Fudging. Like stealing from your employer, fudging is something you never should really do, but most gamers have done it. Once in a while, that's just taking home a pen. If you make a habit of it, eventually your boss is going to see you putting a laser printer in the car, and you'll get your ass fired. So, after Teak drops the gamer F-bomb on Chris, things go from heated to red hot. Chris yells at Teak, Teak yells back. Chris literally has his back against the wall, which would be the wall of my parents' eat-in kitchen. Everybody else backs their chairs away from the table, and the air is just crackling with anger and testosterone, and to be honest, a fair amount of BO. And Teak leans back and he crosses his arms and he flatly accuses Chris of lying about secret dice rolls. Well, Chris is not having it. He balls up his fists, he yells, I am not a cheater! And he throws back his arms for emphasis. And there's this loud crack and a thud and a tearing sound as Chris puts his elbow through the wall of my parents' kitchen. That put an end to the argument. It also ended D&D weekends at my parents' house for quite a while. But even a little real-world violence was not enough to put me off of my gaming habit. No, my personal rock bottom came later in college. I had sunk hundreds of dollars into a collectible trading card game called Magic the Gathering. Magic is a bit of marketing evil genius. The game itself is a pretty fun and fast-moving card game about wizards dueling each other with spells and followers and enchanted artifacts. The genius part is how the game is sold. So you buy booster packs, and each booster pack is 15 randomly assorted cards from hundreds of possibilities the game designers have made. And you take these packs, and you take the cards, and you put together your own custom deck that you actually play the game with. And the more packs you buy, the more cards you have to build your deck. And you can also trade cards with other players to get just the deck and just the collection you want. And the cards range from really common, so common that once you start playing it, you just start throwing them away, to really rare, where you might have to buy 10 or 20 or 100 booster packs to get the one you want. In its heyday in the 90s, Magic was the Beanie Babies of the gamer world. Everyone I knew played the game, everyone traded the cards, and hobby stores and bookstores were selling individual rare cards for $100 and up. So I'd gone down to North Carolina to visit my first girlfriend, who was going to college there, and she played Magic too. And late one Saturday night, we're in her dorm room and we're trading Magic cards, and she had this really rare card that I wanted for my collection. And if I had that card, that particular card, I would be able to finish building my Green Forest power deck and finally wipe the smug smile off the faces of my friends in Virginia who were always beating me at this stupid game. So I'm there in the dorm room and we're trading, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Basically, I told my girlfriend I loved her, and then I talked her into a terrible, nonsensical trade to cheat her out of this really rare Magic card. I pleaded, I cajoled, I fast-talked, I even lied a little bit. I would stop at nothing to get what I wanted. And on the drive back to Virginia, I thought to myself, what kind of person does this? And I didn't like the answer because, I mean, I only saw her like once every month or two, and I had to drive 6 hours to get there, and what did I spend our Saturday night together doing? Convincing her to give me a piece of paper. And I felt bad about it, but even though I actually stopped playing Magic soon after that, I felt so bad about it. But I was just too much of a coward to ever tell my girlfriend I knew that what I had done was wrong. I wanted to apologize, but I just couldn't, because then I would have to explain that I really was the kind of person who was so petty and competitive, I would cheat someone I loved out of something valuable just so I could win a meaningless card game against some other dorky guy in his parents' basement. Well, a few years ago, I found my box of Magic cards in my attic when my wife and I were getting ready to have a yard sale. And that box, that pile of cards, had cost me at least $1,000 and a little bit of my soul. So I put a $10 or best offer sign on the box, and I set it out in the driveway. And near the end of the day, I wound up just giving it away to this nice-seeming woman. She had a 10-year-old son, she explained, and she was looking for a wholesome game that he could play with his little brother. As they drove away, I couldn't help but thinking that, like a pusher, I had given that kid his first taste of gaming for free. He might have to pay a little more for the next hit.